So, good evening, everyone. And my name is Charming Evelyn, and I chair the Water Committee for the Angeles chapter of Sierra Club, which encompasses LA County and Orange County. I am also co-chair of the Sierra Club California Water Committee, which means we oversee all the water in all of California. And so the Delta, this is something that we've been working on for many, many, many years. And I've done many tours up and down the state actually presenting on the Delta through its various transformations and names. If you've lived in California for a long time, you will know that it was first called the Peripheral Canal, then it was the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, then it was California Water Fix and Eco Restore, and now it is called the Delta Conveyance because we've been able to thwart it at every single turn. And so this evening, Caty will present on the Delta Conveyance. And Caty is a member of staff with Sierra Club California. However, she is based in Southern California. She's based in Los Angeles. And her role is to specifically work on the Delta, on our opposition campaign to the Delta Conveyance. That is her role. And she's getting her feet wet in making presentations and learning more about the Delta. And so I shall hand it over to my partner in crime, Caty Wagner.
Thank you, Charming. I appreciate that. And feet wet, that's a good pun. I love it. So I am now going to show you our slides, and you'll be looking at that instead of my face for a while. Nice break for everyone. And we'll pause about halfway through for questions, and then we will head to, we'll have some more questions after that. All right, does that look good to everyone? Great. Let me just move our faces out of the way. So as Charming said, I'm Caty Wagner. I use she, her pronouns. And I don't think I can see the chat at this point. So if something urgent pops up, like you can't hear me, please just unmute yourself and let me know if something is going on. Like I said, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm based in Los Angeles, also known as Tongva land. That's something we're trying to do, is pay homage to the people who lived here before us at Sierra Club. So before settlers in Los Angeles, there were the Tongva people. So tonight we're going to talk about a big overview. So this is a good presentation for anyone who doesn't really know much about the Delta Tunnel. Maybe you've never heard anything. If you're an expert and a genius, you might find this a little redundant, but you can also show off when we have question and answers and, you know, blow everyone's mind. And I do spot a few experts in the crowd, so that'll be great. So this is the Sacramento-San Joaquin Bay Delta. The delta is located at the convergence of the San Joaquin and Sacramento River systems. The region is located about 60 miles east of San Francisco, with Stockton located directly east. This is the largest natural estuary on the west coast of both North and South America. Fed by runoff from the northern Sierra Nevada and southern Cascade mountain ranges, fresh water in the delta flows westward and eventually combines with salt water in the bay portion of the estuary, then flows to the Pacific Ocean. The region is home to 4 million people and is 1,100 square miles in total. Let me tell you about some previous fights over this same body of water. For decades, Central Valley farmers and water agencies and wholesalers have pressed for increasingly more water to be diverted from the delta and sent south via a large canal or tunnel. The first instance of this was the Peripheral Canal, first proposed in the 1940s. It was backed by Governor Jerry Brown during his early terms as governor in the 1970s and 80s, and resoundingly rejected by voters in a statewide ballot measure in 1982. The state-funded canal would have been constructed to entirely move water from Northern California rivers around the Delta and to Central and Southern California. In 2013, a similar proposal was released under the name of the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, a plan consisting of restoring ecosystem habitat and improving water conveyance. The conveyance portion of this project proposed constructing 2 massive tunnels to divert Sacramento River water underneath the delta and then deliver the water to the Central Valley in Southern California. In 2015, the conveyance portion was renamed California Water Fix and Eco Restore, aka the Twin Tunnels. That's probably when this project became more familiar to most people. It's okay if you still haven't heard of that. Fortunately, WaterFix was met with fierce opposition from the Sierra Club and other conservation groups. By the time Jerry Brown left office during his last term, he was considering only building a single tunnel, and then enter Governor Newsom's single tunnel, the Delta Conveyance Project, aka the Delta Tunnel Project, which is where we are right now. In January 2020, the department released a Notice of Preparation, NOP, might be more familiar to you, initiating the preparation of an Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, if you've heard of that, for the Delta Single Tunnel Project and the first step in the environmental review process required under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. The project as currently proposed would be a 42-mile tunnel, 190 feet below the surface in the North Delta. Like its predecessors, the tunnel would be operated to divert freshwater flows from rivers feeding the Delta. The water would be shipped to large farming operations and water wholesalers south of the Delta. The tunnel would have a capacity to divert up to 6,000 cubic feet per second of water. Water would be shipped to the Central Valley for ag, to some other water agencies, and some of it would go south to the Metropolitan Water District. It is estimated to cost $15.9 billion in 2020 dollars, but it's likely to cost up to $40 billion with inflation and overages. Construction is supposed to start in 2024 if they have their way, and it'll take about 16 years. Illustrated by the chart on the right, the Department of Water Resources has identified 2 potential corridors. You've got the Central Corridor and the Eastern Corridor, both of which have major environmental and public health impacts. Because it is located at the convergence of 2 rivers, the Delta serves as a key migration area for many fish and wildlife species. All Central Valley anadromous fish species migrate through the Delta, while other fish species, including the native Delta smelt, pictured here, and longfin smelt and Sacramento splittail, are all year-long Delta residents. The region is also a key area for birds migrating along the Pacific Flyway, such as these sandhill cranes. Ugh, this picture always gets me. Fresh water flowing through the estuary keeps the Bay Delta ecosystem thriving, but despite using hatcheries, no smelt have existed in the Delta since 2017. These salmon are one of the main sources of food for orca and killer whales on the Pacific coast, and one of the main industries of indigenous people on the North Coast. The reduced flow raises the temperature of the water, it increases salinity, so the salt in the water, and of course decreases the volume of water. Flow was recently found to be one of the biggest indicators of salmon population health. Ugh, another terrible picture, sorry about that. Stagnant water can lead to the spread of algae and bacteria. You may have recently seen the 40,000 geese, ducks, and other birds in the Klamath area that perished due to avian botulism. The botulism was caused by stagnant water, which made the fish and insects they ate toxic. This could be another concern for the Delta region in the future if the tunnel is built and freshwater flow is reduced. The Delta area has some of the highest poverty rates in the state, although not the whole area isn't comprised of poverty, but there is some of the highest poverty rates in the state, and the area most affected by the tunnel is largely made up of Black Indigenous people of color. Water quality will of course decline, and as there is less fresh water to flush out salt and impurities. This is something we're trying to stay especially focused on given the climate of 2020 and who is affected and impacted by these things. The area is already in the top 5% of the worst air quality in the country, and the construction of the tunnel will increase harmful algal blooms, aka HABs, you might have heard of HABs, which are toxic. The HABs this summer were already 200 times beyond the safe limit in the region, and as water further stagnates from the tunnel, the problem will only get worse. When the algae dries, it becomes airborne and makes nearby residents and wildlife sick. Air will further be polluted by the construction's daily truck trips over 16 years, estimated for some of the alternatives, some of the routes planned. It depends and it varies, but it's estimated to be at least 100,000 trips of the trucks going back and forth every day. The noise from drilling will hurt boating tourism, one of the area's main industries, as well as stress out wildlife, pets, and residents. If you have any pets and you hear the noise from thunderstorms or fireworks, you know what that's like. So imagine 16 years of that. One resident spoke of having to drug the animals in the local shelter over there the last time they had a major construction project, and the shelter would be near the proposed construction site, and she's concerned about having to sedate the animals maybe daily for 16 years. So how does the tunnel affect the South Central Valley and Southern California, other parts of the state? Metropolitan Water District is the regional water retailer for Southern California with 26 member agencies and 19 million residents in their service area. MET was what we call it for short. MET is the biggest player in the tunnel. They have been pushing Governor Newsom, working behind the scenes, and currently have 2 delegates to the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority for the tunnel. That's the group responsible for designing and building the tunnel. They've even made comments about talking to Joe Biden should he win the election. And we already know that President Trump is a fan of this tunnel. The project is estimated to cost $16 billion before inflation and up to $40 billion, with MET primarily picking up 65% of the cost and pushing that cost down on ratepayers. MET ratepayers will see higher water bills and property taxes. They're funded both through ad valorem property taxes and through water rates. They've already spent $175 million to buy islands in the Delta to dump muck on. So muck is that nasty, muddy stuff that they're going to scoop up when they dig down to put the framework for the tunnel and the canals. So when they scoop that up, they're going to put a lot of that on the islands, allegedly, but most likely. In December, that was $175 million spent to purchase those islands for that purpose already. Then in April, another $50 million was pledged from MET to the planning and permitting phases of this project. In December, this is the big one, and we'll talk more about this later. In December, the Department of Water Resources will ask for a portion of approximately $385 million from MET for the next phase of planning. They'll ask that money of all of their contractors, but MET's the big one. In 2022, they will ask for more money for more planning and permitting. In total, in those 4 years, they're going to ask MET alone for at least $237 million. Then in 2024, they will ask for the final estimated $15.9 billion, and 2/3 of that will be about $11 billion, and that will be the portion just for MET. This is at a time when we're struggling in the pandemic, the recession, and agencies are already trying to find more sustainable sources of water and want to be less dependent on imported water. This really is just, it's not a good time for this project. A common argument in favor of the tunnel is seismic protection, but that's false. The tunnel does not address earthquake vulnerabilities in existing infrastructure. Any water exported through the single tunnel would eventually flow to and through existing water distribution systems in the southern San Joaquin Valley and Southern California regions, which sit on the San Andreas Fault. Much of this infrastructure is at a greater risk of earthquake damage than delta levees for reasons ranging from geographic location to negligent maintenance and upkeep. Project Eco Restore, which is over here, has started a number of infrastructure restoration projects since 2018, but a lot more can be done to stabilize waterways. So if these structures are not maintained, then the tunnel is moot. Climate change, big topic of this year and the rest of our lives. The tunnel won't provide new water, but it will increase the water rates for Southern California residents. So it's not a new source of water. It's not like they found some magic spring or a new river. This is not new water. With climate change and a melting snowpack, there is no guarantee that it would produce reliable amounts of water as time goes on. The tunnel will not provide water from some plentiful new source, and with federal diversions, less and less water is flowing through the delta already, and then the tunnel will be just taking water out of a starving ecosystem, causing fish and wildlife to go extinct and subjecting delta communities to poor water quality. So at this point, I think we'll stop and take a little break for questions before we get into alternatives and what we can do about this. Are there any questions right now at this point? You can either unmute yourself, raise your hand, or use the chat feature.
What representatives in the state government are supporting this tunnel besides the obvious one of Newsom?
There's Newsom, Department of Water Resources, and then the contractors. So the folks that are planning to be a part of this and pay for it, that would be Met. And then the bigger contractors, so they call them south of the Delta and north of the Delta. There's no one north of the Delta that would need to be a part of this, but the south of the Delta supporters, contractor supporters are Santa Clara Valley Water District, and then San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later. So you've got those folks who are considering paying for this water, and then Met has been one of the biggest proponents of it. Their general manager, Jeff Keitlinger, which we'll talk about as well, he's been pushing for this for a very long time.
And the state representatives, the assemblymen?
I don't have as much information on that because they're not quite our targets. They're not really, the decision about it won't really be up to them. It's not like it's going to be a vote by any of them. It will come down to, at this point anyway, about who's going to be funding it, which will be the water agencies. Chami, do you have any?
Yes, so I will.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so somebody says, how do you spell MET? MET is short for Metropolitan Water District.
And I'll type it
and
out.
Instead of saying MWD, we say MET because here in Southern California, everything is like West Basin MWD, Central Basin MWD, which, you know, so to not confuse the other MWDs of Metropolitan Water District, we say MET for Metropolitan Water District. In regards to state senators, so one of the biggest people pushing this is Devin Nunes out in the Central Valley, and he was actually responsible in getting this fast-tracked under the Trump administration. Before Trump won, he did say that Devin did approach Trump and said, this is one of the things we need fast-track. So he has been one of the bigger pushers, and a lot of the representatives that are within Central Valley that represent agriculture, they do support this. The reason it is not in legislature is because it failed. It failed in the legislation. It failed when it was put on a ballot. And so they figured out the best way to go around the electorate is to try and get it done themselves. And they have tried, that's what a lot of Prop 1 that failed the last time. Some of the money was supposed to go towards the Delta. And so they have tried different things to get funding. And every single time they try, we just keep an eye on it. And we just mount a huge campaign to not allow them to move forward with it. So it will not be going through the state legislature at all.
Thank you, Chiming. Any other questions right now? Billy?
Yes, I want to know, you're saying that the Delta, is that the San Joaquin River?
San Joaquin River and the Sacramento River. Let me show you that map again.
Behind you.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. In the photo, yes.
Yes, in
a healthy, wet time of year.
The Central Valley farmers are very, very conservative, and I've driven up, I grew up in the Central Valley. They are a force to be reckoned with. How do environmental groups such as my beloved Sierra Club fight them to keep this from happening, because it's the end results, in my opinion, are disastrous.
Yeah, I'll take a
to
stab at this and
the
then
environment.
chiming if you want to follow up. But yeah, I'm from Visalia, and Devin Nunes, whew, I know exactly what you're talking about with those billboards. And yeah, fortunately right now, they are not our main target. They're not our main opponent. Metropolitan Water District is, and we'll talk about that a bit more. The Central Valley Project has mostly opted out of this at this point, and we know that there's probably some way that they are talking about maybe selling water to Central Valley farmers, kind of workarounds about this. We know that Kern Valley is probably opting out of this, so there might be some kind of workarounds. Yep, the Resnick's Palm, the wonderful company.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's that. We'll talk about some ways that we can be more conservative with water in ag uses for water. You know, ag isn't the enemy. We've all got to figure out ways to work with water to feed ourselves and everything else. There's ways that we can be smarter about how we use water in agriculture, and that's a big part of it. That's something we can do. And yeah, they're not really our main target in this fight.
Marianne Reynolds. I just wanted to say that I've been following the sort of Delta projects over the last 10 years. And I have been a member of Restore the Delta for a number of years. And I've gotten a lot of information about the different stages this has gone through. And, you know, it just seems to me that Southern California is going to benefit from this. I don't see how the farmers, the small farmers in the San Joaquin Valley are going to benefit from it. And it's going to be a really negative impact on those that live right now in the Delta and around the Delta. And it just seems to me so obvious that it is so detrimental to the environment here in the area around where they want to sort of dig the tunnel. And to think it's going to take 16 years to finish it. The disruption, and as you were saying, I mean, the impact on the wildlife and just animals in general. To me, it just seems like a project which has so many negatives and only maybe some benefits to those that live in Southern California. And I do agree with you in terms of needing to stress the importance of conserving water and approaching maybe desalination of seawater for Southern California. But it just really concerns me if they decide to go through with this. It certainly is not the will of the people.
You're exactly right. It is not the will of the people. Yes, for San Joaquin Valley farmers in the Delta region, it will impact their farming. There's a lot of pear orchards around there, and the Petit Blanc grape, or a specific kind of grapes that can only grow over there. So they'll be impacted for sure. South Central Valley farmers, they want more water for, you know, pistachios, almonds, pomegranates, things that they grow down there. Southern California, so the argument why they would want it is they say they'll benefit because a lot of their water is already imported from the State Water Project, and we'll talk more about Southern California in a minute, and then the Colorado River and LA River. But we've found really that the demand for water has gone down. It's really not a true benefit. It's, you know, they'll have extra water to put in storage, but there are a lot of other ways that they can get water, and they just don't need that much water anymore. That's just, there's not a true desire and need for this water. It's just not necessary. It's not pressing anymore like it used to be. And then we've already got, you know, it's 2020. We have new ways to get that water, and we'll talk more about that. You brought up another point I want to, oh, the ocean desal, the seawater desal that you said might be, desalination, that might be a good idea for Southern California. Sierra Club would say that that's a very last resort when there's absolutely nothing else to be done. Inland brackish desalination might be a better idea sometimes when sea levels rise and salt water goes further and further in and hurts wetlands further in. But we've got water recycling options, stormwater capture, gray water, which we'll talk about, that are just much better options than desalination. It's really something we try to avoid unless there's absolutely nothing left. Let's take one more question, and then
Caty.
hopefully the rest of the presentation will answer your questions.
Caty,
Annette, you've been, oh, go ahead, Charmin.
Let me clarify something, because there is a huge misconception that this water is coming to Southern California. It is not. This water will be stored, will be put in storage in Central Valley. None of this water will be coming to Southern California. And so it is very important for everyone to understand that. The other thing is that Southern California does not have a shortage of water, which is why we do not need ocean desalination plants. In Southern California, we actually have a very, very robust groundwater replenishment system. None of our groundwater is suffering the way it actually has suffered within the Central Valley. So there are really, really huge differences, and it's very important for people to know those differences. The way we manage water in Southern California is very different to how water is managed in the Central Valley. And Southern California is using the same amount of water today that it used in the 70s. And that is despite population growth and development. And so, you know, it really is a false equivalency about saying that the water is needed in Southern California. It is not. And Southern California is actually moving towards more water independence. So I wanted to clarify that for everyone today.
Yeah, Southern California will say that they need the water, but they don't. That's more about money.
So
Annette,
who needs this water then? Who's going to be benefiting from it?
Central Valley
Agriculture.
farmers,
Yes.
The central,
agribusiness.
yeah, I mean the central San Joaquin Valley. Is that what you
Right.
mean?
South
Yeah.
Yeah.
Central
Are
Valley.
you talking about agribusiness farmers, or are you talking about small farmers? I grew up in the Modesto area, in Salida. My father was a small farmer. Most everyone was back in those days. But there's a big difference. I live in Marin County now, and there's a huge community of organic small farms. And I mean, they're famous, that county, this county is famous for that. And the grape growing, of course, we're all burning up now, but that's another story altogether. But there's such a difference between, if you're addressing big farms, I'm talking mega thousands of acres in Central California, or the small farmers. And my concern is the small farmers, because the fight in Marin is for people, and there's a trend in many parts of the country, to support small farmers, and particularly organic farmers. And regenerative farming, and you know all about that. So it sounds like, of course, the big farm, the industrial farms are the ones with the power. So they've got this big voice, and the small farmers are too busy doing the work. I mean, you know, I don't want to get into that, but so I just want to bring up the difference, which I'm sure you all know, but it fits into who's got the power. The other thing that I want to ask, and I'm sort of out of touch with a lot of what's going on in the Central Valley, because my family is no longer farming. They gave it up. well, that's another story also, but, and so I've, and it's been so difficult to see what's going on in the Central Valley that it's too painful for me to keep up very much. Um, so this is I'm stepping back in because it's something I care so much about. And this is just, I'm learning from being here and it's fascinating. But what is Newsom's, uh, what's his platform? How is he supporting this? With what? I mean, I understand it's all about money, but what's his argument when he gives his spiel about why we should do this here? How is he selling it? It's so obviously twisted and bad.
It's a legacy project.
A legacy project?
A legacy project. Governor Brown happens to be his godfather.
Ooh,
Oh,
okay, that's it. Yeah.
Just some of the little intricacies.
I mean, this sounds, well, it just Yosemite and, you know, the sorrow over the loss of the other valley, and how could anybody be so foolish as to do such a thing? And here we are, back to square one.
Mm-hmm. All right, Charming, unless there's anything else you want to add, let's see if some of these questions popping up in the chat are answered from the rest of the presentation, and then we will get to them at the end.
Yes, go right ahead, Caty.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, arrow button isn't working. Let's give it a second. Okay, here we go. Oh. All right. So the Sierra Club is demanding a common sense alternative. That's what we're calling it. No tunnel plus infrastructure improvements to the Delta area. That's key. So we're saying we don't want a tunnel, but you also have to kind of fix the problems that are already there because the Delta is in poor shape as it is. Southern California demand for water has not only been drastically reduced in the last few years, the demand has remained the same since the 1970s. Regional sustainable water programs can meet the need. We advocate for conservation, gray water, stormwater capture, recycled water, and inland brackish desalination. Inland brackish, a little bit different. I'm going to send you these slides later, and these links are all clickable. So if you want to dig deep, you can click on all of these and see this white paper that Charming was a huge part of, the smart alternatives to the tunnel, and kind of get some more details and depth there. So ag and conservation. 80% of the state's developed water sources currently goes to the ag industry. To best address climate crisis impacts, California's agricultural industry needs to invest in new water management systems and techniques that are both climate resilient and less dependent on diversions of water from the Bay Delta and its watersheds. California is home to productive soil that can produce over 250 different crops. However, many of these crops are permanent orchard crops, such as fruit, nut trees, and vineyard crops that require continuous watering. Soil management techniques such as mulching, rotational grazing, and conservation tillage can provide significant water savings due to reduced evaporation. Moreover, these practices also sequester and store carbon in the soil. Employing these techniques in arid areas of the state and selecting crops that are less water intensive can yield mass amounts of reduced water consumption for the agricultural industry. And what you see here is an almond orchard being irrigated. Improvements in water efficiency can provide a number of benefits for farmers, the environment, and communities. By adopting new irrigation technologies such as drip and micro-irrigation systems and improving irrigation scheduling, it is estimated that the agricultural industry can reduce both water and energy consumption by up to 30% of present conditions. Moreover, providing capital investment to upgrade irrigation infrastructure is key to reducing water losses that can amount to 100,000 acre-feet per year in some water districts. 1 acre foot is the size of a football field, which is enough water for about 3 to 4 households in a year. Another way to increase water efficiency in agriculture would be reclaiming and retiring degraded lands on the western side of the San Joaquin Valley to repurpose them for more sustainable uses. Partial or complete fallowing of degraded fields holds a high potential for water conservation. Moreover, drainage impaired land has been going out of production. For example, in 2006, Westlands Water District reported 89,000 acres of retired land. And between 2006 and 2015, the California Department of Land Conservation found a further net reduction of 276,000 irrigated acres of land in the San Joaquin Valley. With these lands in retirement, water savings would increase exponentially. Let's talk about water conservation. These conservation methods include shifting land uses, repairing leaks, and assessing and managing water transfer. So not just in ag, but in the rest of the state, in our own homes and businesses. There's other things we can do. With existing technology, landscaping, plumbing, metering, and green building ordinances, the potential for water savings in urban area has vastly increased. We're big advocates of remediating and recycled water. Here are some projects that are already in existence that we're big fans of, or at least, most of them. So the concept here is to remediate, recycle, and recharge the groundwater. Remediation means to make it clean and take contaminated water, make it potable again, and recharging groundwater means holding excess water for dry years underground and developing groundwater augmentation to meet annual water needs. Gray water is the gently used domestic water from sinks, tubs, and washing machines. Many gray water codes do not allow gray water to be stored, including in California, so there are gray water systems that immediately reuse gray water rather than treating or storing it. Water agencies and Met should motivate and help property owners maximize gray water and recycled water for irrigation, commercial, industrial, and groundwater recharge uses while exploring the potential potable reuse options for advanced treated wastewater. The law hasn't quite caught up yet with gray water, but they are working on direct potable reuse. The State Water Control Board has mandated that agencies figure out at least a framework by 2023. So hopefully in the next few years, we'll see options to turn all kinds of water into something potable and drinkable. Stormwater capture is the process of collecting rainwater and then remediating it and recycling it to be used again. So you can see a little bit more about that here. It's a much bigger program in Los Angeles. And we talked a little bit about this before, desalination. So we support desalinating brackish inland water. Brackish inland desalination is the process of removing salt from brackish, which means mixed salt and fresh water that's further inland. As sea levels rise, salt water moves further and further inland and mixes with fresh water, which is harming freshwater ecosystems. While the Sierra Club supports inland brackish desalination, we're not big fans of ocean desal. It's pretty destructive to the environment around it when it pumps that excess salt into marine habitats.
Wow.
We really need to maintain our existing water infrastructure. Broken infrastructure, including leaking water mains, create massive waste of water and energy, as well as other hazards. About 10% of the water going through pipes in California leaks out every year. Massive work needs to be done. There are some areas where their pipes are still made out of redwood trees. That's how old they are. So we talked about our alternatives. Now let's talk about who's really behind all of this and what to do about it. So it's time for a new direction. Jeff Keitlinger here is retiring after 15 years in the role of General Manager of Metropolitan Water District. We expect that he'll still be a consultant after he retires and continue to push for this tunnel from behind the scenes consulting wherever he is. He meets with the governor and he's mentioned wanting to get Joe Biden on board for this tunnel. He's said openly in meetings that folks really need to push Newsom to support the tunnel strongly, openly, all of that. So now's our chance to demand a replacement who values sustainability. So that's one approach we're taking to this whole situation, that he's on his way out. So the next person will probably be there for another 15 years or so. We need someone who is not going to support this tunnel replacing him. We need someone who opposes the tunnel and supports sustainability. This is our chance to do that. The hiring firm, the Hawkins Company, they will offer an electronic survey, but they're not offering listening sessions. We pushed really hard in July, and a lot of people make calls saying we need the opportunity to have these public outreach meetings. We need folks to hear from the public. We need the board to hear from the public what qualifications we want to see in a general manager, so we can hold Met accountable to choosing someone with those qualifications. Met board director Adan Ortega told them specifically when that came out to give us the Zoom meetings, and we've sent a letter. He saw it and knew that we would just be making the comments in public comment anyway, so might as well give us a meeting. This Monday coming up and Tuesday, you can call in and demand that they give us a virtual meeting. That's one of the many things we can do, and discuss the qualifications we want in the general manager. When we get that virtual meeting, then that's our chance to make it clear that we need a general manager who opposes the tunnels and supports affordable, sustainable local solutions. I'm going to send you talking points for Monday and Tuesday's meetings after this presentation. I know Monday is Indigenous Peoples Day, but they're still open for business. If you're busy, then Tuesday is an option as well. So we're hoping that in the time frame we have that we can still get that option to get the virtual meetings so that we can talk it out. But they do expect to end their public outreach period by mid-November, and then have their candidates chosen and interviewed starting January 1st. So the big vote, this is the big thing. This is really one of our biggest things we can do to stop this tunnel. So on December 7th and 8th, mark your calendars, the Department of Water Resources will ask Met to vote on 1, allowing other water contractors the option of opting out of the tunnel, which would then leave a bigger financial burden to the rest. So I mentioned before, it's 65% of this tunnel, the burden of paying for it would fall on Met, but as more people drop out, that would get higher and higher. We know that Kern Valley is probably dropping out, Central Valley Project dropped out. So they're gonna vote on how do they deal with this opt-out process. You know, what if people down the road what if contractors down the road can't afford to be a part of this anymore? Or what if at some point they want to opt in? They're going to figure that out in December. That's one of the things. 2, the governance structure of the DCA or DCA, that's the construction authority. So it's interesting that on the same day that they're asking for money, they're looking at completely redoing their governance structure and who's in charge of this money and how they're spending and all of that, just something to consider. And then, of course, funding the next phase of planning. And that's the big one. Like I said, the whole cost of the next 4 years will be $385 million. The portion for Met over the course of 4 years will be $237 million right now. That could go up if other contractors drop out. But right now it's $237 million. Those other contractors are voting on this before Met. Met is the last one to be voting on this. So that number could go up by the time we get to them in December. And then they're voting on it 2 years at a time. So we hear it might be about 110, 120 million in December right now. And then the rest of that chunk of 237 will be in 2 years. But those numbers could change by December. But either way, in the end of 4 years, it'll be 237 million just for planning and permitting. And then after that will be that big chunk of money, the 16 billion in bonds to pay for the rest of the tunnel. And doing the math on 16 billion, that would be about $450 million a year just for Met to pay off that. So we'll absolutely see an increase in water rates. The board has already acknowledged that, yes, they'll have to raise water rates to pay for that. So what can we do about it? So there's a link here. If you haven't seen it, we have a new Facebook group for Stopping the Delta Tunnel. You can click here, or you can just search on Facebook for Stop the Delta Tunnel. I know a lot of people don't like to read all the emails we send you, so if you're in the Facebook group, you'll see all of the updates as they happen. That's, you know, if you're really interested in this, that might be the fastest way to stay on top of everything. Or you can always email me. I don't mind talking to people all day. If you want to see some more information and background and context and white papers and fact sheet, check out our website right here. Again, I'll send you the slides later, and all these links are clickable. And then we've got the big vote in December, and we need to get folks mobilized. I know that the election is on everyone's mind right now. We're not going to push you too hard, but after that election, we really need to get the word out there. We need volunteers to send letters, emails, make social media comments, make phone calls and all of that. And then I did the hard part for you. I already wrote it all out in a big document. All you have to do is copy paste. So I've got for you your emails, your letters if you want to send a paper letter in the mail. I've already got your tweets written out for you and your Facebook comments. Copy it, put it on the wall. That's all you have to do. It's really easy. So the panel series, this was kind of an introduction to let folks know what's going on with the tunnel, but in the next few weeks, we'll get more in depth about what's going on. So, and you'll hear from people who are experts and directly related to this. So if you want to take down these dates here, and you'll get emails and reminders, and I called all of you yesterday, so you know I'll be calling, and that the next one you'll hear about the impacts of the tunnel on local residents. So things like sea level rising and water surges, having less water because of the tunnel, the ways that farmers will be impacted, that families will be impacted, north of the Delta, south of the Delta, east of the river, west of the river. You're going to hear about all those differences and who's impacted and how. Then on the 27th, we'll hear from wildlife experts. So this is fun. We've got people who their whole world is birds and fish, and they know everything you could ever want to know about these animals and how they're going to be affected in both the Delta region and then out in the ocean, because remember, these fish feed a lot of the marine mammals out there. So we'll hear from that. And then in early November, dates and confirmed panelists will be coming soon. We're going to hear from representatives in the indigenous communities. The Winnemem-Wintu tribe are going to be hugely affected by this tunnel, and we'll hear from them and other folks on what's been going on, and then how the negotiation process so far has been going. And hint, it's not great. And then finally, we'll hear about everything else, right, that we can do after the election, right before this big vote, and just that big push, because this is if we kill this funding vote, if they decide no, we're not going to fund this, we could effectively kill this tunnel, or at least delay it for a very long time. But this is our chance to say, don't fund this tunnel. This tunnel, if it doesn't get funded, there's a good chance that it's not going to happen. And this is our chance come December. So giving public comment is a fun way to get involved, and we've got stuff coming up pretty soon. It's my favorite thing to do. I love to get on the phone and yell at people. So with the DCA, that's the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority, they have a stakeholder engagement committee. Some folks from there are already on this call, and that's fantastic. And that's where they hear from people who live in the Delta and all of their concerns. Not so many folks from outside of the Delta area usually participate, but we really want to get folks from all over the state because it impacts everyone, right? You know, ratepayers down in the South and folks in the Bay Area, everybody's going to be impacted by this thing. So we really want to get more folks on there making public comment. I know that they don't like it when we make public comment, which is all the more reason to do it. And then this was pretty exciting. The Met's Bay Delta committee members, some of them didn't know that there was a stakeholder engagement committee meeting, said, what's that? So you can bet we're going to invite them next time to come listen to all the comments. So it would be great if we can all get on there and say, stop this tunnel, and they hear people from all over the state saying, this tunnel is a bad idea. So if maybe these board members who maybe haven't been paying too much attention, if they hear from us that this is a terrible thing, that's going to impact them. That's going to be great. The annoying thing about these meetings is that they're about 3 hours long and public comment is at the end, but it's usually pretty succinctly right around 5:45, 6 o'clock. So you don't need to listen to the whole thing unless you want to. I mean, it's juicy, there's a lot of yelling. But if you want to just wait until public comment time, that's around 5:45. And again, this link here will give you all the information, or you can just Google Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority, look at their meetings, see the Stakeholder Engagement Committee meeting, and again, it's November 5th. MET is my favorite. They love hearing from us. And so they've got some important meetings coming up. We'll see October 12th, 13th, and 27th. That's this Monday and Tuesday, like I said before. I will send you talking points tomorrow. I also, they put out their agenda tonight, so I want to see if they've gotten up to any shenanigans that maybe I need to amend those talking points and catch them before. But assuming that they didn't do anything crazy, we are going to talk to some of their folks about this general manager and say, hey, we need to have a public outreach virtual meeting where you can hear from us. So that's one of the big things we'll be talking about. And then of course, opposition to this tunnel and making that known that, hey, we know that big funding vote is coming. We want you to say no. We are letting you know now. Stop it. So those talking points and those meetings will be coming up. Their meetings are a little confusing in that they've got their committees on Monday and then part of Tuesday before their general board. So for something to pass, for an action to be taken, it will go through the committee, and then if it passes through there, or a letter is sent, then it will go to the general board. So there are a lot of times when we need to call in twice. We might need to call in on Monday and then again at the general board. That will definitely be the case in December. Depending on how much time you've got this upcoming week, it'd be great if you can call in both on Monday to talk about the general manager on Monday, and then call again on Tuesday. But if you can't, just pick one, and that's fine. And then on the 27th, they'll have their Bay Delta meeting, and that would be a great time to, again, talk about how terrible the Delta is, and then also let those folks know that they should listen to the SEC meeting. We'll send a letter, but if you can have your voice in that meeting and say, hey, you need to go listen to that, that would be fantastic. So those are coming up. And then, of course, December 7th and 8th, I don't know the exact time of the committee meeting in December, but we know that the general board meeting will be December 8th at 12 o'clock. And it's a public line where you call in, and sometimes these meetings are a little delayed. They don't stagger them very well. Sometimes you have to wait a while, but don't lose hope. Don't get frustrated. Text me, email me, call me. Well, don't call me because I'll be on the line too. But text me or email me and say, I don't understand what's going on, and I'll walk you through it. It's important that you just stay on the line and wait for your turn to speak. You can walk away and make a snack and mute your phone, but don't give up. Don't get off that phone line. And then there's also the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. So they're also a contractor, right? And they get to vote on this too. Their percentage is much smaller, so they're not a huge focus of this. You know, MET is 65%, but they are a contractor who's considering that. And their next upcoming meeting is October 13th, so that's also Tuesday. That's pretty much right after the general board meeting on MET. So you could make a whole day of calling all day long if you want to. It'd be fun. So you can call and kind of make the same talking points that, yes, you're a different water contractor, but it's the same point, oppose the tunnel. And I'm sorry, I can hear my cat using the litter box. I apologize. And then also on October 13th, throughout the day, they've got a bunch of different meetings, and they did say that their calendar is going to update tomorrow, the 9th. So check back in. But there are meetings for Santa Clara Valley Water District. They are pretty staunchly big fans of this tunnel. They're tough on that, but you know, it's worth it to hear our voices, right? Some of these folks really only want to hear from you if you're in that district, but I also think that, hey, this tunnel affects everyone all over the state. So I'm going to call in to my folks in Los Angeles, but I think that it's worth it for everyone to hear from us, and you can just be upfront about where you live. It's your choice there. So those are all the big things we're doing. Those panels will tell you more about that, about the project as a whole. But then, you know, we've got these panels, we've got these public comments. And then after that election, you know, if you've heard about that, after the election, then we'll kind of really step up our game and just try to get out as many emails, phone calls, public comments as we can, and just make it very clear that this tunnel is awful. So with that, we can go back to question and answer and see if anything wasn't answered. So we'll start with, go ahead, Marianne.
Yeah, I have just a general question. What sort of location is the Metropolitan Water District? Is that
Great question. I was going to pull my map off the wall, but it's essentially Ventura County down through San Diego County along the coast, but it does touch a bit in San Bernardino and Riverside counties as well. It's like where most of the people live in Southern California, south of Ventura.
Well, do you know, I don't understand why they're so willing to put so much money into it when they're not going to be receiving very much of the water from the tunnels.
So they make their money from water that's imported. Right now, they don't have any of their own recycling projects. On Tuesday, they are going to tell the Met staff is going to tell the Met board about a regional recycling program. That'll be the first time that they have recycled water within their own region. So they support other local resource programs from other agencies, but this is the first time they're doing it as Met. And that's fantastic. We love it. We're on board. We're talking with them about how great it is. And that's awesome. If they could do a lot more things like that, they wouldn't need this tunnel water so much, but they make their money from imported water. So,
oh,
Carmen, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so Marianne, Metropolitan Water District or Met, they are the water wholesaler. That's what they do.
That's okay.
So, yes, and so they're managing state water project water, and they sell that water to other agencies in Southern California, who in turn sell their water to sometimes an even smaller water district or to the consumer.
Well, do you know, I've heard the name Resnick sort of brought up very often when you're talking about water and about this project. So can you make some comment on that? What role they play in all of this?
So the Resnicks or Palm Wonderful, everyone knows the brand Palm Wonderful, almonds, you know, pistachios. They are what we would consider big agriculture. They are not your little farmers. And so with the last drought, they actually had to fallow a lot of land because there wasn't enough water to go around with the last big drought. And what they actually ended up doing, they actually asked smaller farmers to sell them their water rights, so that they could keep their farms going. And so this project would enable them to have water all year round, whether there is a drought or whether there is no drought, at the benefit and really at the cost of the smaller farmers. So they are looking for more water rights. But if you know anything about California water, you know water rights date back to the gold rush days. And so, you know, you do have a hierarchy of who gets water when, and this is their way of trying to bypass that and get more water to keep their farms alive. I don't even want to call it a farm because that's doing a disservice to the small farmers. Really and truly, they are a big conglomerate, you know, agriculture, and a lot of the things that they produce, we barely even use 20% of it in the United States. 80% of it is actually exported.
Okay, all right. So the Resniks sort of support this tunnel project because they are going to be benefiting. They're going to be getting water from the Metropolitan
Yes, they will be direct beneficiaries.
of the
So
Met.
right, if that water is stored in the Central Valley, because Metropolitan has storage all over the place, that water
Okay.
is stored in Central Valley, then it can be redirected to
Uh,
the Big Ag.
Okay, okay, this is making more sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so I know there were a couple of questions. There was a question about building the tunnel project to address climate change. So that is one of the things they were saying, but here is something everyone doesn't know. When they build this new tunnel, they are not going to, which will be the northern tunnel. The tunnel they have right now that takes out water is called the southern tunnel. They will not stop using that southern tunnel. They actually will be using both tunnels. So they are not building the northern one and saying, okay, the southern one will be under seawater in 20 years, so we're building a northern tunnel. No, that's not what's happening. They plan on using both of those tunnels. And they have said to me personally that when they build the northern tunnel, they expect it to have a life of about 30 years before it itself actually is subjected to sea level rise. So why are you investing all this money for something you know that will be impacted by sea level rise about 30 years after it has been built?
Mm.
So there are all those things in the background that are actually happening. And so sea level rise is an issue. We do realize it's an issue, but it's not an excuse for them to build another northern tunnel. And I think somebody else asked about the
Yeah,
Trinity
so I'm going
River.
back just to make sure we don't forget anyone. And I think the furthest back question that we didn't get was Christina asked, is there a large fracking lobby as well? I don't think the fracking folks have too much to do with this project. I mean, yeah, they use water for fracking process, but they're not really, they haven't really seemed to be the big ones.
Maybe I wonder if Christina, are you referring to the reuse of fracking water for agriculture? Because that is happening in the Central Valley. I do know that. So I'm not sure if that,
In Oildale.
I thought that fracking water was just really toxic. I didn't know that it could be reused at all because of the carcinogens and the proprietary chemicals we don't know about.
I mean,
so
they do it.
they do it. What they do is they have some kind of process they use, they say, to clean up the water, like having the water go through, I think, like walnut shells and carbon and so on. So they do some kind of cleanup, but yes, they are using that water for agriculture. Now, this is something that we have not taken up as part of the Sierra Club California Water Committee because we are all volunteers and we are
Yeah.
limited in our bandwidth. But I can tell you Food and Water Watch actually has been working on that. And that's how I know, is because they brought it to my attention maybe about 4 years ago. And really, that's how I know about it.
Yeah, that seems kind of alarming to me, but okay, good to know they're working on it.
Yeah.
Someone asked why Central Valley isn't our main target right now. Really because Met is, if we can get Met to vote no, don't fund this tunnel, then we can kill this tunnel. So right now, anyway, that is our big goal. That's in December, that's 2-3 months away. So that's a big focus. After that, we can look at, all right, where else is this tunnel still getting support from? If we're not successful, then okay, we're still going to be challenging Met and everyone else. But if it dies and lays low for a while and then someone else tries to bring it up again, I think that would absolutely be a time to start looking at Central Valley a little more closely. Charming, do you know about how the tunnels would affect the demand for Trinity River water?
So it absolutely would affect the demand. And Amber did, Amber, you did speak about the salmon die-offs and so on. And the same thing is actually happening in the Delta. That occurred up to 2 years ago, where the water was so warm, fisheries, the Department of Fisheries actually had to go and take the salmon out of the Delta and put it in hatcheries, because they were dying. So it absolutely would affect the Trinity River. Another reason we actually have been fighting to have a voluntary agreement. If you haven't heard of a voluntary agreement, it's scientists did come up with a study that said 60 to 70% of water needed to remain in the river to keep our marine life alive and viable. And the Newsom administration, instead of actually adopting those VOAs, that's what we call them, a VOA, instead of adopting those VOAs, decided, oh, let's try and work something out with, agriculture and come up with something. And the something they came up with was, well, let's leave 40% of the water in the estuary. And of course, we don't subscribe to that at all. So this is still kind of a work in progress, and we are still resisting that. And so that's where we are with the voluntary agreements.
Now we asked if the tunnel project would mean that with the reduced flow of river water to the ocean, does that mean then that salty water would come back into the delta? And yes, absolutely. It would increase the salinity of the water there. The salinity would then hurt the ecosystems. That's a big one of the problems here. Yes, I'm going to send you the meetings date. So I'll take the big action items off of the slides. I'll send all of that to you, as well as talking points for these upcoming meetings, and then the social media toolkit. I'll send that out a couple times, especially if anything changes. But it's a work of art. It is organized by all of the targets and by all the platforms. So if you want to Facebook DWR, but you want to tweet Met, but you want to call Newsom, I've got everything you need there. So don't you worry.
Katie,
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
sorry.
Penelope is asking, Penelope, where do you live? She says
I live in Ridgecrest in the desert where we had those earthquakes a couple years ago. About a 2-hour drive south of Bishop, 3 hours south of Mammoth on the Eastern Sierra in Kern County.
In Kern County? So
East Sierra.
East Sierra. Okay.
Mojave Desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, near the Tehachapi area and the mountains up there. So the folks up there are talking about getting water pumped up from somewhere in Kern up over the mountains and sent over there. They're looking for someone who's willing to sell them the water. So they're still in negotiations for that. I think maybe somehow if the water comes from the Delta and then is down stored in the South Central Valley, and then those folks send it up, that's a possibility. But I think they're still in pretty early stages of trying to figure that out, unless anyone has heard an update. OSHA made a good point that yes, the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority Board of Directors meeting is at 2 p.m. on the 15th. Yeah, that is a shorter meeting, so that's another awesome place to make those comments. And Santa Clara, yeah, they need to know more about the tunnel costs and everything else. Met, not necessarily, they're like a hybrid, they're not a nonprofit, right? They're a hybrid public, private, right, Charming? Yeah,
Yes.
They're not completely nonprofit government agency.
Yes, that's correct. They're not a complete nonprofit.
Yeah, I will definitely keep everyone in the loop. You will all get lots of calls from me. And yes, the stuff is in the talking points as well as background context if you kind of zoned out for any of this. Also, feel free to just say your comments out loud as I read this with my bad eyes.
And so I
Someone's, okay, good.
Kim Floyd was on earlier. And so Penelope, if you're in the Riverside, San Bernardino area, Kim Floyd actually is Sierra Club, and he is conservation chair. So it would be good for you and him to actually speak to each other and figure out what else is happening over there. And I can always speak with Kim after.
Yeah, and then Liz, you asked if there's a website besides the talking points. So we've got our website, and that's a good source of information, but Restore the Delta has been like the lead on this for years and years, and they're super duper smart. They know everything, and they're kind of the ones that we go to get like the nitty gritty of this. And a lot of our partners are great on this too. Sam, well, you know, there's a long list, but yeah, Restore the Delta, and then our website as well. But if you have specific questions, you can always email me. Again, caty.wagner@Sierra Club. And you have my number because I called everyone here. So feel free to ask me any question anytime. And if I don't know the answer, I will find an expert.
Great.
That looks like that's it for questions from the chat. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, so in terms of arguing before Met, there's no new water provided by these tunnels. It's going to cost $16 billion plus. It's going to take 20 years to get it done. They don't need the water. So those are the reasons, those are the negatives. So what are the pros that the board is being applied with? In other words, why would the Met want to invest this money, which is going to raise the rates for the water users down there in Southern California?
Sure. So the earthquake argument is one they're making, which we've already said, no, it's not accurate. That maybe the specific chunk of the tunnel will have some like stabilizing factors to make this part great. But if it's passing through stuff that isn't, you know, architecturally sound enough to survive an earthquake, then what is the point if it's going to, you know, go out on the way down there? So the earthquake argument doesn't work. They're trying to turn climate change in their favor and say, oh, with climate change, we're all going to run out of surface water and all kinds of water. We need this because that way we can store water. You know, that's our biggest source of water in California. We can store more of that water somewhere else when we run out down here. Well, okay, you could still run out of water down there. We know with climate change, we could run out of water, that there'll just be less of it, but we also know that winters are going to be shorter, and it's more like the water in the snow melt is going to melt faster, and it's going to be a big strong gust and then less for the rest of the year. So like the summers will be drier. You might get more water, maybe, but all at once. So they're saying, oh, this is a reliable way to capture all of that and then hold on to it for the drier part of the year. Which, why do you need the tunnel for this? Why? There's a bunch of other ways we can do that. That doesn't mean that this is the best way to do that. We've got a lot of different ways to capture water and store it. We know that with the water replenishment district, there's a lot of room, a lot of capacity in their groundwater basins right now where they could put water. So we can recycle water, put it in there. We can capture that storm water, that gray water, clean it up, put that in there. It does not have to come from the snow melt, which, you know, we also don't know what climate change is going to look like beyond 2030. We don't know that by the time this tunnel is built that there will be any snow melt left up there. We can't see that far into the future with climate change, that water might not be existing there by the time this thing is built. So, you know, if their argument is that we need to put water in storage, there's a lot of other places where we can get that water from.
There's a lot, you guys have a lot of really good arguments against this and a lot of conservation ideas, which we just need to convince the board not to hire another kitelinger. Hire somebody that's a little
the
more
Kitelinger's, yeah, he's one big part of it. And then, you know, this vote in December, so Kitelinger will leave a few months after this vote. And he'll always be lurking around somewhere. But, you know, this vote happens first. So the board is still our big target, and then Kitelinger as well.
And I think that's really one of the reasons it's so important for the board to hear from people from Northern California, because I've been fighting this for so long down here, and they never hear the voices of the people from Northern California and how it's going to directly impact them. We are down here in Southern California We have no idea what's happening in Stockton, what's happening on the Trinity River. And so, you know, MWD brings them on those great trips. They go see the Delta and it's like, oh yes, wonderful, there's water. Oh yes, oh yes. And the board members vote for it without thinking of the repercussions of what's happening in Northern California. And so it's really, really important for them to hear voices from Northern California saying, we don't want this project. Because for now, they you know, I know for me, they're probably not tired of Caty yet, but they're tired of seeing my face, always saying, no, 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 this is what you should be doing instead. And again, this is another opportunity where we're trying to, you know, get them to stop pushing this project.
And I can tell you that public comment has been really effective here. I mean, I know with Devin Nunes, I would send him a million emails, phone calls, show up at his office every other day. And like, he just didn't care. He does not care what the public thinks about him. But they do care. They are concerned. They've maybe had a snarky tweet or two, which I won't, you know, really get into all of that. But they are paying attention. And I have contacted every single one of them one-on-one, and they know who we are. And then folks up in the north have heard about us down here. So DWR, DCA, they have heard about the stink that we're making with Met, and they're on top of it. So the bigger the stink, the more noise that we make, the bigger this is. And I think that a lot of the folks on that board, they didn't really have an opinion either way. They've just been fed facts. And when they hear from us, they're like, oh, okay, I didn't hear that perspective. So they want to hear from us. This is a group that's willing to listen and work with us. We just need to be the loudest voice in the room.
Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. All right, any other questions?
Caty, are you going to give us individuals to target, whether it's Newsom or whatever, like a list of politicians and yes, all that?
Yep, we will. I think for the most part, it'll be committees within Met right now, as well as Newsom, but Met and then their committees and their board members are probably our biggest targets right now, and then that could change over time. But yep, I will send all of that to you. So yes, good point. So I'm going to send to you talking points, a reminder of these upcoming dates, the slides with all the links, and then I'll take the juicy stuff out and put it in an email that's easier for you to see. All these upcoming dates, and then your social media toolkit. And so I will send all of that to you, and I will email and call and remind you about the next upcoming panels. But also, if you want to just have it all in one spot too, the Facebook group is pretty convenient rather than like hearing from me and checking your email. One more time, that's Stop the Delta Tunnel on Facebook. And otherwise, you will hear from me soon. And thanks so much for coming. This was a lot of fun. Have a good weekend, everyone, and you'll see us soon on the next panel. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. This was so informative. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you.